And as we take decisive action to stop the threat posed by the terrorist regime in Iran with Operation Epic Fury. Is that a great name? Well, it's only good if you win. You know, you can only do. And we've won. Let me tell you, we've won. You know, you never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over.
ברוכים הבאים למרקרים, פודקאסט סוף השבוע של דה מרקר. ההזדמנות שלכם לקחת פסק זמן ממחזור החדשות היומיומי ולצלול איתנו לאירועים, לאנשים ובעיקר לרעיונות מאחורי החדשות. כאן באולפן איתכם כבדי שבוע, גיא רולניק. כן, שמעתם בפתיח כמובן את נשיא ארצות הברית דונלד טראמפ, מדבר באחד מהרליז שלו, הפעם בהברון קנטקי, מול הבייס, מול המגה שלו. זה היה ב-11 במרס, שטראמפ הכריז שוב על ניצחון סופי על איראן. 3 שבועות חלפו מאז הנאום הזה, 5 שבועות חלפו מאז פתחו ישראל וארצות הברית במלחמה באיראן, והיום כבר ברור ששתי המטרות העיקריות של המלחמה, שמעולם לא הוצגו רשמית אגב, שינוי המשטר והשגת האורניום המואשר של האיראנים, לא יושגו. גם נתניהו נוקט בשיטת טראמפ. ביום שלישי בלילה השבוע הוא הודיע במסיבת עיתונאים בפורמט החביב עליו, שהיא בעיקר נאום לאומה שכל ערוצי הטלוויזיה משדרים כמו בדיקטטורה. הוא הכריז גם שהסרנו את האיום האיראני. אזרחים עם זיכרון של יותר משעה יודעים שזה פחות או יותר מה שנתניהו הכריז בסוף המלחמה הקודמת של 12 הימים ביוני שנה שעברה. ואז מהר מאוד התברר שכל ההישגים העצומים של מלחמת יוני שנה שעברה, כמו חיסול המשגרים והשגה של עשורים או דורות בתוכנית הגרעין, לא הושגו כמובן. היכולת של טראמפ ונתניהו לשקר בצורה כל כך בוטה לגבי הישגי מלחמה, היא כמובן תוצר של עידן המידע בו אנחנו נמצאים. בעולם של רשתות חברתיות, הציבור איבד כל אמון בכך שיש הבדל בין שקר ואמת, ולמעשה שיש שקר ושיש אמת. הציבור תופס את המציאות הפוליטית כמאבק של נרטיבים, של מחנות. אין כבר מחנה משותף, אין עובדות עליהם אנחנו מסכימים, וממילא אין דרך לחתור לברר את העובדות. מי שדיאטת המידע שלו בשבועות האחרונים מכלי התקשורת הישראלים, בעיקר האתרים המרכזיים וערוצי הטלוויזיה העיקריים, קיבל מדי ערב בעיקר את המסרים של ראש הממשלה, של הנשיא טראמפ ושל צה"ל. הוא גם קיבל פאנלים מלאים בדוברים של השלטון או במתנגדיו. אבל אנשים שמנסים באמת לרדת לעומק הדברים ולברר את העובדות, זה לא דיון שתמצאו כמעט בכלי התקשורת בישראל. זה לא המודל העסקי, זה לא המודל המקצועי שלהם, הם בעסקי הבידור והרייטינג, ולא בעסקי ניסיון לברר את המציאות. אז כאמור בשבוע שעבר הבטחנו לכם שאנחנו יוצאים לחופשה של שבועיים, אבל כמה שעות לפני סדר הפסח לא התאפקנו, ודן ברומר, העורך האגדי, באמצע ההכנות לפסח, יחד עם אסף פרידמן, המפיק שלנו, ואני החלטנו לערוך מחדש מהדורה מיוחדת על האירועים האחרונים. העורך שלנו הוא אחד המומחים הגדולים בעולם לתחום המלחמה והטרור, פרופסור רוברט פייפ מאוניברסיטת שיקגו. חלק מכם, המנויים של הארץ והמרקר, כבר קיבלו את עיקרי הניתוח שלו השבוע במהדורה הדיגיטלית והמודפסת. עכשיו אנחנו מביאים כאן את השיחה המלאה. הדברים שתשמעו מיד שונים מהותית ממה ששמעתם וראיתם בחודש האחרון בכלי התקשורת המרכזיים. פרופסור פייפ מציג תסריט הרבה פחות אופטימי. הסיבה העיקרית שאני מביא את דברי פייפ כאן היא לא משום שאני חושב שלפייפ יש יכולת הרבה יותר טובה לנבא את המשך המערכה באיראן בימים הקרובים או בשנים הקרובות, אלא בעיקר בגלל שחשוב לשמוע קולות אחרים, מאוד שונים ממה שהישראלים מקבלים יום יום. קיבלתי הרבה מאוד תגובות לפרסום של עיקרי הדברים של פרופסור פייפ השבוע במרקר. אחת המפתיעות ביותר הייתה התגובה של אחד מראשי מערכת הביטחון לשעבר בישראל, אדם שעמד עד לא מזמן בראש אחד הגופים שאמונים בין השאר על החזית האיראנית. דבריו הפתיע אותי. הוא כתב לי שדברי פייפ הם מדויקים לחלוטין ומבריקים, ציטוט, לצערו. אני כמובן לא יודע אם הוא צודק, אבל חשוב לראות שהתסריט השונה שהוא צופה והזווית שיציג כאן עכשיו פרופסור פייפ, הם גם לגיטימיים וצריכים להיכלל בשיח על האיומים הביטחוניים שעומדים בפני ישראל, על האסטרטגיה מולם ועל העתיד של התהליך המדיני. זאת גם אגב אחת התגובות שקיבלתי מאחד מהפרשנים הצבאיים הכי חשובים בישראל. רוברט פייפ הוא פרופסור למדע המדינה באוניברסיטת שיקגו, ידוע במחקריו על טרור ועל הפצצות אוויריות. בספרו Bombing to Win, Air Power and Coercion in War, הוא ניתח עשרות מערכות לחימה בהם נראה כי הפצצות מהאוויר כמעט אינן משיגות הכרעה, כאשר הן מכוונות גם לאוכלוסייה אזרחית. לטענתו האסטרטגיה היעילה ביותר היא כפייה באמצעות שלילת יכולת, פגיעה בכוחות הצבאיים של היריב ולא ברוח של האוכלוסייה. הספר השפיע עמוקות על החשיבה הצבאית המודרנית והציב סימן שאלה על יעילות ההפצצות האסטרטגיות לאורך ההיסטוריה. Professor Peyp, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
What is the most important thing that most Israelis and Americans don't understand about this war?
The most important thing is that Israel and the United States is not on a path to success, where success means greater security for their country, their territory, their economy, and their people. We are going deeper and deeper into an escalation trap. It's not just simply escalation. We're not just simply moving up rungs. We're not simply just incrementally adding more and more strikes. We are now walking rather directly into a trap, and at each stage, and I've laid out 3 stages, 1, 2, 3. I did this before the first bombs fell. I did this on the Substack, the escalation trap. But at each stage, 1, 2, 3, what we are seeing is it is more difficult to get out. These are not just simply a little more strikes. What you are seeing are phase shifts, and they are phase shifts that are drawing us deeper and deeper in and making it more and more difficult to reverse course.
So tell us about this trap. How is it going to look like?
I have modeled the bombing of Iran for 30 years. In your introduction, very kind of you, you pointed out I've been studying air power for 30 years. I've taught for the U.S. Air Force conventional targeting strategy. The book Bombing to Win, it's not just about air power. See, when you study the impact of air power, you have to study the other dimensions of those wars as well. So that means land power, naval power. That's also, you mentioned my work on terrorism. So you shouldn't think of this as just a narrow focus on air power, because sometimes air power can help those other instruments to be successful or not. So stage 1 of the current situation is started actually with the bombing of Fordó. So the bombing of Fordó, and I modeled this for 20 years, was American B-2s. Israel could not hit Fordó. They could try, hit it, but they couldn't really knock it out. And that's been true for 20 years. And that's why you always needed the B-2s to come in. And of course, we've over those 20 years, we have added the Moab, we've added the tactics, and we have made it the case that we would be highly tactically successful, which we were in the bombing of Fordó. And what that meant was we would destroy the ability of those facilities to industrially produce enriched uranium, to have all those centrifuges organized in cascades. And we did that with a high degree of accuracy and confidence. And this was 90+% always likely to occur. And in fact, you wouldn't even have to get all the way down and dig into the chambers with the double tap attacks to knock out the centrifuges. Causing a massive earthquake was going to be enough to do that. And so that's why we're highly confident that those centrifuges aren't working. The problem is the actual strategic goal was about the enriched uranium, the 1,000 pounds of 60% enriched uranium and 10,000 pounds of 5 and 20%, because Iran over the years had already produced sufficient quantities of enriched uranium to produce somewhere between 10 and 16 nuclear weapons. And by the way, along not just a threat to develop nuclear weapons, but that material, highly radioactive and can be used for radiological bombs as well, which is a very, very important concern here to Israel. I will say more about that, I'm sure, later. So that was stage one, where we were tactically successful, but the material was not destroyed. And in fact, we have civilian satellite imagery of Iranians taking stuff out of Fordo just before the bombs hit. And that's in the civilian satellite so I can only imagine what's behind the green doors here and for Israel and the United States. And so we know they are very likely dispersing that material, and it was not fully destroyed if any of it was destroyed. That I always said in this analysis I've been doing for 20 years would lead a year or two later, and it turned out to be just 8 months, not even a year or two, to the regime change bombing. And the reason you would do regime change bombing is because you would effectively panic over time. You would not have the IAEA, your best eyes and ears and monitoring of all that material. Iran's not letting that back in. And so over time, you would have intelligence. You still have the Mossad. You still have CIA. You can have humans, et cetera, signals. But the bottom line is you would be more and more concerned about what was happening with that nuclear material. And the only way you could deal with this militarily then would be with the regime change. And so I said, even though for 20 years the United States has resisted Israel's call to do regime change with air power in Iran, this is how it would actually happen. Well, that was stage two of the trap. And then we have done that, and we did, again, tactically successful, hit target, kill leader, but now you have the lash back with air power. And this is not unique to this case. We have other cases I go through in my book and my written work where when you have a regime change with air power alone, it doesn't just fail passively. It doesn't just harden the regime, which it does. It leaves vulnerable a lashback. And that lashback is the horizontal escalation campaign that Iran has unleashed with its precision-guided drones, and mines, and now then seizing the Straits of Hormuz. So now we're in a situation at the end of stage two of the escalation trap, where Iran as a regime did not collapse. It's more dangerous as a regime. It's basically in a Revolutionary Guard regime now, through and through. So it's more dangerous. Number two, Iran is more powerful than it was 28 days ago. And why is that? It's because it controls 20% of the world's oil. Well, the United States only controls 16% of oil production for the world. So they are now the oil hegemon for the world. And over time, they've already made something like $2 billion in selling their oil. In fact, we have to let them sell their oil, or else the price of oil is going to skyrocket even more. And over the next year, they're on track to make something like $50-75 billion by controlling the Straits of Hormuz, and they're now taxing other ships for going through. This is just a nightmare of catastrophic proportions already. So we are now in a trap where are we just going to walk away from this problem? Are we going to leave Iran, which is now a massive oil hegemon, global oil hegemon? It's going to make enormous amounts of money. It is nuclear capable already. And it's undoubtedly going to build alliances with Russia, another 11% of the world's oil, China. AI could come pouring into Iran, make it even more dangerous. What we have just done is created the most catastrophic consequence due to an air campaign in history. And this was tragic, but fully predictable before the war. I'm doing everything I can to explain the stages. And now we're heading to stage 3, which is the ground war. And I see us mobilizing for this. We are, just as we mobilized for the air campaign about 3 weeks before, a month before, now we're mobilizing for the ground campaign. It will start limited. And as I've been saying, even before the first bomb fell, it will be limited, but limited here is not going to stay limited. And we can explain that as well. So I see this as essentially strengthening Iran. Making it more likely Iran will have nuclear weapons. This is going to change the balance of power in the Middle East, and it will probably change the global balance of power, all to the detriment of Israel and the United States.
So you don't see a scenario where Trump and Netanyahu will stop and come to some kind of agreement and there is not going to be a ground invasion?
Well, I have articulated possibilities here. This could only end one of two ways, at the negotiating table or on the battlefield. But if you're going to try to negotiate your way out of it, all of those offers that Iran was making, which already we did not like, before the bombs fell on Feb 28, we know what the offer was on Feb 27, because Witkoff and Kushner were meeting in the Oval Office, 3:15 p.m. Eastern time, and they presented President Trump, well, what Iran wants to do is keep its 3.5% enriched uranium, not ship any of that, the 10,000, all that quantity. They don't want to ship it out of the country. They want to keep it all. And essentially, Trump said, no deal. And that's when he went for the bombing. Well, that is, we've blown by that as an offer. Now Iran controls 20% of the world's oil. Again, I just laid out all the benefits for Iran. Why is Iran going to give up power and money to bail out Netanyahu and Trump? They're not. Now, so you're going to have to up the ante pretty strong. What would that look like? Well, I said in the beginning, there's always, and I said this in the very first set of podcasts I said there's two things that are going to start to happen. Number one is America is going to have to lift oil sanctions on Iran, and we've done that. Scott Bessent has done that. And it's because, of course, that serves our interests as well. So that's the easy thing to do, even though it enriches Iran. But the big deal is militarily contain Israel. And I can't even tell you that if you do militarily contain Israel, that's going to be enough, because after all, you're talking about Iran giving up power. And think about the power that Iran is being asked to give up here. But what that would mean is maybe you can trade power for security, where you could have an enforced deal where Israel would join the NPT, which would mean tit for tat on-site inspections. That is, if there's on-site inspection in Esifan, Fורדו, there would be on-site inspection at Dimona of the nuclear power facilities. That's real intel, by the way. So Israel's not going to want to give that up. It's not a member of the NPT. But why would that be in Iran's interest? It's because when you have that, then there would be a much better accounting of exactly how many nuclear weapons Israel likely has. That's why Israel would not want to do this, by the way, but that's what would be in it for Iran, just to be very blunt and put all this on the table. But I think that's probably not going to be enough. Iran is probably also going to demand that if Israel strikes on Iranian territory again, the U.S. will cut off Israel from all economic and military aid. They may well demand that get passed through Congress, not just simply some paper promise of that here. And then also demand that the U.S. pull out military troops, pull out the entire airbase at Ayudid. And so these are the demands that are now on the table to have, I think, any chance of Iran pulling back from controlling the Strait of Hormuz. And as I said, I can't sit here and tell you that even if you do all those things, Iran will give up power, because that's what is being, I've never seen in all my studies, I have never seen a country willingly give up power. This is a lot of power to give up.
So given the dire scenarios that you just laid out, do you have any ideas why Trump and Netanyahu decided to go to this war?
I depart a little bit from the standard argument that basically Netanyahu's got blackmail on Trump, or it's just the power of Israel like gripping here and the donors. There's undoubtedly that. I mean, there's no doubt that's been going on for a long time. I don't know about the blackmail, but certainly the donors here. I think what accounts for the timing here, that's the real issue, Guy. And I think the timing is what I'm laying out in the escalation trap stages. That once you bomb Fórdó, you were virtually destined to do regime change bombing. And I sold all my stock the moment we bombed Fórdó, because, again, I believe it. Okay. And I've watched in 30 years in the rooms. I've advised every White House from 2001 to 24, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, major debates here with the leadership decapitation school. John Warden was my boss for years here. I always credit him with not firing me. So this is, so I know, I've been right on the front lines of this for a long time. And one of the things I've seen, Guy, is imagine you are, and I'll just make up this. I'm not saying this happened. I'm not saying it didn't happen. But imagine you're a Speaker of the House and you are really worried about a certain conflict. And you get a briefing by somebody with a lot of stars here, and you are being told X, Y, or Z is going to blow up. Well, I'm just telling you, I think it's human nature. I don't think it's a Republican thing. I don't think it's a Democratic thing. It might be a leader thing because we have a lot of leaders who have, a lot of success. But what I think is within 10 minutes, they're asking, once they're seeing 5-meter accuracy of bombs, can I kill the leader? The briefer doesn't have to mention that. Connecting these dots happens very rapidly with these leaders who have triple-digit IQs. And then the next thing I see the eyeballs glazing over with, I control escalation. This isn't just about hitting the first round of targets. I control escalation. So when I hear President Trump talk about, I killed Suleiman, look at what I control. I did this, look at what I control. After the first day or two of bombing here, he says, I have all these off-ramps. I'm in control. I liken this to a lot of things I've seen personally. And I think that illusion of control due to the hyper accuracy of precision technology, which is not just about bombs, it's marrying it with a hyper accurate intel and sensing and so forth. I really believe that plays a real role here and explains why Trump did not do regime change bombing in his first presidency, even though he was begged to do it. He's doing it here. And why? Is there suddenly an Israel lobby that did not exist before? No, I think it's what happened is he bombed Fordot. That's what happened. And that created all of those dynamics that I'm writing about in those articles.
Maybe it's the Saudi lobby that also intervened here?
Well, they may have, but the problem here is what I see is last May, when I'm following Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia and the region and Qatar and UAE, is that he's basically bribing Saudi Arabia to go along with the Abraham Accords with AI. So notice he brings with him all his AI people. Okay, these are all the billionaires who talk on these other podcasts here, and they seem to be very good at making money, by the way. So I think they're actually really are billionaires making money. But what I see that was quid pro quo. You basically normalize relations with Israel, Saudi Arabia, and we're going to let you build the most extensive AI possible, which of course created some of the hemming and hawing from Netanyahu. Does he really want that or not? But bottom line is that's what I saw Trump as the art of the deal. He was doing quid pro quos here. And so, and that is of course in line with building a counterbalancing coalition against Iran. So this all makes very clear sense to a realist like me. The problem here is that for Saudi Arabia in particular, and the UAE, letting Iran keep all of that power, the 20%, all of that money here is likely going to lead them to want to do regime change in Saudi Arabia and the UAE and have more and more power to do it. And this will, Sadat, a lot of your listeners will remember Sadat did the Camp David Accords. He was assassinated by his own security forces at the military parade that he signed off on here. And so I don't think it's so easy to see these assassination attempts coming. But I think that Iran is going to be keenly interested in this. So no surprise to me, MBS is saying, Mr. Trump, President Trump, do not stop this war because his life is on the line here. And I don't think they're going to admit it, but I think they'd be foolish to think that they're going to get out of this without real effort by Iran to topple Saudi Arabia and the UAE and basically spread the influence. Just as America, by the way, topples regimes in Latin America and South America. It's just realism 101.
So you mentioned the first Trump presidency. Do you think that pulling out of the JCPOA was the original mistake?
I think it was a huge mistake because it had no backup plan if it failed. So having been in many, many, many debates here, my position almost always with people coming up with audacious plans, and the Trump maximum economic pressure was an audacious idea because he's ripping up something that was working to replace it with something that may not work. Now, of course, it may work. I definitely understand that. And so my position here and this is true with the strategic bombing advocates who want regime change, is, okay, you may be right. Your audacious plan that has never worked in history, maybe because you're running it, you will finally pull the rabbit out of the hat. My point always is bring a backup plan. Expect the lashback, expect the negative so that you have a backup insurance plan if this goes south. There was no backup by Trump. And so what happened is Trump rips up the JCPOA. There was zero material. There was a tiny little bit of material, enriched material in Iran, but not enough even for a quarter of a bomb, let alone a bomb. And so what happened is he rips it up, and then Iran puts pedal to the metal, starts doing the industrial scale enrichment again. And before you know it, a few years go by, and now we're at material for 10 to 16 bombs and radiological weapons. I just want to underscore this to the Israeli audience here. So my big fear is not that a nuclear weapon goes off in Tel Aviv. My big fear is that Iran is going to put on those missiles or those precision guided drones or through terrorists radiological bombs. And I think you just need one radiological bomb to go off in Tel Aviv. And this is not good here because the real issue for the long term of Israel is there's only 7 million Jews in the country surrounded by 500 million Muslims. And since October 7, as far as I can tell, it looks like there have been no Jews moving into Israel. It looks like there have been 50 to 100,000 or more moving out of Israel. And this radiological scenario I'm describing, I think would be the big worry over the next 6 months or a year. And I think this is something that's got to be front and center here for Israel's security establishment to worry about. Because if that goes off, I think it'd be losing a lot more than 50 or 100,000 Jews out of Israel.
Was it always the case that the Iranian leadership wanted a nuclear bomb, or actually they were pushed to this corner by Trump and Netanyahu?
Well, so we don't have the inner workings here, and I don't think Mossad has them either. Having worked for the Air Force and so forth, I'm glad I don't have the clearances anymore because I found them to be actually likely to lead me down the wrong path as much as help me. So I think this is, people just don't know because they don't have the experience. What I think here is that when I look at the supreme leader who lived, he did 2 fatwas, not 1, 2 fatwas, which were against Iran having a nuclear weapon. And I'm not saying I would bet my life on that, but that is something of a helpful guardrail. And Iran did not develop a nuclear weapon as far as we can tell. I think we would know about it by now. But that's the guy we killed. That's the guy actually Israel killed. And I think if you were going to try to change hawks and doves, so a lot of times I'm debating with these folks and they want to say, we're going to change the balance of hawks and doves. We're going to kill the hawks, put the doves in. Well, as far as I can tell, the supreme leader was more on the dovish side than the hawkish side. And his son, who's just taken over, certainly appears to be more on the hawkish side. And so I think that what's happened is the leadership decapitation that happened here killed mostly the doves and put in the Revolutionary Guard. And I don't think if you had designed it to put in the Revolutionary Guard, you could have done a better job. And I think the Revolutionary Guard must be thrilled to have all those weak political clerics out of the way for them to be being very aggressive. So I think this is hastening the day that Iran will have a nuclear weapon. And we're just teaching them over and over. Look, North Korea's not getting bombed. They got 60 nukes. I think we're just teaching people, not just in Iran, but around the world, including Saudi Arabia, you're better off with a bomb.
So if Israel is indeed, as you say, already in this escalation trap, how does it get out? What you do if you were advising Netanyahu? What will you tell him?
I would still go down this negotiating solution. I would do, first of all, I would pull back from Lebanon. All the things they're doing are helping Iran with its propaganda, because you see, Iran will want to fracture the GCC, and they're going to want to explain to the society, not the leaders, that the leaders are helping Israel conquer them. And that will not work very well. That is what will generate the society pressure for the toppling of the regimes. Well, Israel's behavior by actually conquering Muslim ground just makes that easy. The supreme leader says this, but he doesn't even have to emphasize it because Israel's doing it. So number one, I would stop digging the hole. Number two, I would go down these negotiating roads here, and I would already be talking as Netanyahu to Trump and say, we understand we're going to have to join the NPT here, and by the way, it's like Nixon goes to China. If there's anybody who can pull this off, it's going to be Trump and Netanyahu. It's not going to be it's not going to be the more liberal side of the house. So this is the direction I would go. I laid out the specifics of the deal and the constraints on Israel, and I would actually push those, because I think that's how you extend the longevity of Israel. I think Israel's longevity is in danger now as a result of what has just happened. October 7, of course, was incredibly awful, incredibly tragic. But this is what really puts the longevity of Israel in danger.
And basically what you're saying is that, the hopes that Israel has that it can deal with Hezbollah by being more and more aggressive in Lebanon and by putting more and more troops, actually this is going to do the opposite.
Yes, because it's not so much Israel's overstretched. That's true too, with its small size. The bigger issue is it's going to further not just anger, but mobilize larger parts of the 500 million. Many people tell me, look, what does it matter if I make these Muslims matter at Israel or not? Don't they already all hate Israel? Well, maybe they don't like Israel. Maybe they even all hate Israel. They're not all mobilized against Israel. The issue here is what fraction of 500 million are mobilized to the point of willing to fight and die. And if you got 500 million to 7 million, this isn't going to work out well for Israel. So it is not true that Israel doesn't have anything to lose here. Israel has a ton to lose, and it's not true its nuclear weapons are going to save it from this, because it would have to use nuclear weapons on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. Not going to do that. So these ideas here that Israel can just expand and just make all those 500 million more and more angry. This is a gigantic risk. And there's no backup plan. Again, I'm all for a backup plan. You tell me you want to take the big risk. Okay, show me your backup plan if your risk fails. That is what the other side typically doesn't want to do. And that's where that real limit is.
So you want to, in summary, what you want to tell the Israeli electorate, the Israeli people, is that Netanyahu is trying to convince you that with brute force is going to win over our threats, and the only path to get Israel out of this quagmire is diplomacy.
The only path is diplomacy, and the only path is to have a more stable peace, because the path of unstable war, Israel is not big enough. When the United States did manifest destiny in the 19th century, this is what the Netanyahu plan essentially is, very similar. Your listeners will know what I'm talking about here. We had a fantastic larger European population, and the Indians that we were up against were completely scattered. They were not 500 million. This was not the case. So this is just an unrealistic balance for Israel, and I think it needs to be talked about in these terms. So if I'm wrong, if 7 million Jews can ultimately win through war and defeat and conquer and rule over 500 million Muslims, then just show me the plan. I'm really putting it on the table here, and I think that's really the $64,000 issue for Israel. How are 7 million Jews going to live in a sea of 500 million Muslims? I don't think they're going to kill them all. I don't think they're going to use nuclear weapons because that would blow back on their own people. There's only one way, and I think that is a stable peace. So that is the big picture that I would give to the Israeli public.
Yeah, just 6 or 7 months ago, you probably recall that all the headlines and the stories in the leading newspapers around the world, and of course in Israel, Netanyahu and Trump were portraying Israel, and they're portraying the 12 days war in the summer as if Israel is this superpower that projected its power to the entire Middle East. And now, actually, in March of 2026, it's the opposite picture.
That's right. It was basically a balloon like in the stock market. It's just rhetoric, and it lasts for a while until the balloon punctures with reality. I call this a victory rhetoric meets escalation reality. And I think that's what's happening here. That's why I build things, sort of take the Warren Buffett approach. Let's actually have actual stable growth.
Professor רוברט, פייפ, thank you so much for joining us today.
I just want to say one more thing to the Israeli public. What an honor it is to speak with you here. It is, for me, an incredible honor to be able to offer any possible thing that can contribute to your security. That is really what I am trying to do. And I recognize what an honor it is for me. So thank you very much.
זהו, עד כאן. אכן דברים לא פשוטים. מבצע אפיק פרי, זעם אפי, זה שם באמת שנשמע כמו טריילר לסרט פעולה מסוג ב' ולא כאסטרטגיה צבאית רצינית. זה היה שם שהיה אמור לשדר לנו כוח בלתי ניתן לעצירה. בפועל היום הוא נראה בעיקר כמו מין בדיחה מתמשכת על פער בין רטוריקה למציאות. דונלד טראמפ הכריז שוב ושוב על ניצחון, כאילו שמדובר בתוכניות ריאליטי שנגמרת מיד בפרק הפתיחה. הוא נגמר בשעה הראשונה, הוא סיפר לנו, וזה משפט שמאז שנשמע בשבועות הראשונים של המלחמה, נשמע היום יותר ויותר מצחיק או נוגה. גם נתניהו נוקט באותה שיטה, הרבה כותרות, מעט תוצאות. טראמפ מכר לנו ניצחון תוך שעה, נתניהו מוכר לנו מזרח תיכון חדש. בפועל קיבלנו אזור מאוד מתוח, ואוכלוסייה שרצה למקלטים מזה 5 שבועות, כל כמה שעות, תוך תקווה שבאמת משהו ישתנה. זהו, שיהיה לכולנו חג שמח ופסח כשר, או פסח פחות כשר, כל אחד לפי טעמו, ואנחנו ניפגש פה בשבוע הבא. תודה ולהתראות.